the Miraculous Mamas podcast. We believe in empowering women through storytelling and education. And we're all on this journey together of learning more, finding out our options, and discovering what works for us. That's why I love interviewing different people who believe different things, who come from different viewpoints, who have different stories, because at some point, one of those is going to resonate with you, or you're going to learn something that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that this was an option, and go for it. And that's what it's all about. Even interviewing people that have not viewpoints that are the same as mine, like that we don't agree on certain things, or I choose to do some things differently in my home. And I think that that's so important, because when you learn better, you can do better. Or when you just learn your options, you're like I said before, like, wow, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know people were doing this. And I've found that with like tandem nursing. I feel like I haven't found a lot of options or a lot of resources. Somebody just reached out to me and was asking me about breastfeeding through pregnancy and resources. And I'm like, I didn't find a lot. I even trying to Google things, that there just like wasn't tons out there. And I'm like, I guess I was just in the moment doing what I feel, trying to figure it out. And looking back, I'm not sure how we made it breastfeeding through pregnancy, because it was really painful. I was really tired, and there were times where we supplemented. There were times when I gave her like a bottle instead, and just tried to make it work. And somehow I just like couldn't quit. But that's not the right journey for everybody at all. And I just actually interviewed somebody about weaning, and she's going to share her story and how she weaned during pregnancy and how that worked for her. So it's, like I said, it's just really nice hearing other people's stories and getting information. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, go back and listen. Jenna was on, and she's like just so insightful. And I could have interviewed her forever, all about toxins in our environment and how it affects our hormones and fertility. And there's so many studies out there that are not being shared, and that doctors don't even tell us about. They might not even know about them. That's the thing. Like the recommendations on some things are just so far behind what research has shown us. And then it can just be really frustrating trying to find your options or find certain things, but the research and the data is out there. And one thing that was really interesting that we talked about, and I had posted on Instagram, was non-fat dairy versus full-fat dairy and how that affects fertility. And I thought that it was newer research that was coming out, but these were studies back from 2007 that was showing people who ate non-fat, fat-free, low-fat had way higher struggles with fertility issues than those who ate full fat. And I'm like, why isn't this being talked about? Like, why I've been in the birthing world for almost 10 years now. Actually, 10 years. I started in 2012. Like, how is this not being talked about more? Why aren't doctors telling this to young women who are at that point where they're like, hey, I'm considering getting off birth control, family planning? Like, there should just be so much more information available to people about this. So if you didn't listen to the episode, definitely go back and listen to it. There's so much good information in there. And last week was Infertility Awareness Week. And I had interviewed somebody named Megan Smalley, who's on the podcast today. And she's going to share her journey of her struggles of trying to conceive with us. And I just love like her story, and then the resources that she's created around it. Like, she's created this amazing sisterhood community, and just resources for people on both sides of infertility. So, people going through it, and then people who have friends who are going through it, because it's not, sometimes you don't know how to support somebody in that season of life. You don't know what to say or how to support them. You want to be there for them. And if you're trying to conceive at the same time, and let's say you get pregnant and your friend doesn't, like, that's a really hard conversation. And so she actually has an amazing resource on how to tell your friend dealing with infertility that you are pregnant. She's created, like I said, just so many amazing resources. She has the Give Grace book, her sisterhood, and just the willingness to share her story to help others who are going through it. And I just really enjoy my conversation with her today. And I know that you guys will get a lot out of it. So before we dive into the interview, if you're listening, make sure that you share the podcast, that you leave a review. And the reviews is like a really good way for us to get heard. Support our sponsors. The sponsor today is Kindred Bravely, which is my absolute favorite maternity clothing company. And not even maternity, like postpartum. I'm literally wearing my pants right now, and I wore them through my entire pregnancy with Jovi, my entire postpartum journey, then back into my pregnancy. And I'm like, I should probably get some more pants. So I did. And just continue listening. I just want to thank everybody for showing up and supporting the podcast. It means so, so much to me. Each and every single one of you who take time out of your schedules to listen, who take time to share the podcast, to leave a review, to send me guests that you want to have on, topics, different things like that. It means a lot. And as I've mentioned before, when you send me topics, sometimes it takes a while to find the right person to speak to it. And then there has been guests that I've reached out to that I've never heard back from. So I do reach out to people to come on the podcast when you're like, hey, you should have this person come on. And sometimes I do, and sometimes we just never really hear back from them. So there's a whole list of episodes I'd like to do, but like I said, it's just finding the right person or waiting to hear back. But I want to thank you for continuing to show up here. All right, we are going to dive into this interview with Megan. All right, everyone, I have Megan Smalley on today, and I'm excited to talk to her because she just has a really cool story that she's going to share with us today. She's also coming out with a book that it sounds awesome. It sounds incredible, especially since everything that she's been through and the community that she had that rallied around her. And so she's going to share her journey of infertility and the lessons that she learned along the way to help others accept grace and heal during life's toughest trials. So thank you so much, Megan, for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of let you take it from here.
Okay. So I am a coach's wife. My husband coaches high school girls basketball, and I am a wife, a mom, a business owner, an author, a podcast host. I do all the things. We're actually in the middle of getting a new production shop off the ground. So we produce t-shirts and print and embroider products for people. And so it's kind of a new venture within the umbrella of what I do. But yeah, so my journey to motherhood, my journey to and through motherhood were not normal. Blake and I had been married for about a year when we started trying, and it just didn't happen like you think it's supposed to happen. And it ended up being 5 years before we had kids, and 2 rounds of IVF, lots and lots of money, lots and lots of medication, prayers, shots, all the things. And we had our twins first. We transferred 2 embryos, and they were born on August 8th, 2017. And then we did another embryo transfer about 2.5 years later, and that failed. And then we did a 3rd embryo transfer from that round of IVF. And we have our 3rd baby boy, James, who is 16 months old now. He was the sweetest, easiest baby ever, and now is the most wild toddler ever. So we're in the stage now where I turn around and he's like splashing in the toilet water and throwing surprises down the toilet. And like my husband will walk in and all the things from the cabinet are out on the floor. And he's like, who did this? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It was me. I got bored and I just dumped everything out of the cabinet. So we're in that stage. And then just entering motherhood with twins it flipped our world upside down. It was incredibly challenging for our marriage because Blake had to be mom too. I mean, he was working a lot, coaching football and basketball, and then coming home to 2 screaming babies and feeling unequipped he struggled in the baby phase of not knowing what to do. And like, he would do the exact same thing I just tried and it wouldn't work. And he'd get frustrated. And then I would do it and it works. And he's like, I literally just did that. Like, why? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Blake, they lived in my body. I'm feeding them from my body. Like, it's not the same. And so anyways, twins were incredibly challenging and still are challenging in different ways. I mean, they started fighting at a year old and I tell all my friends, like, you really don't know what sibling fighting is like until your second is old enough to verbally keep up with your first, because verbal fighting takes it to a whole nother level because they can be strapped in the car and can't touch each other and they're screaming at each other and you're just like, ah! Mm-hmm. So anyways, that is my journey to and through motherhood. And I just become really passionate about encouraging moms on their journey to and through motherhood because it's hard and it's lonely. And infertility is so hard and it's something that is very misunderstood. And then I also see my friends on the other side who got pregnant really easily and just have no clue, like deeply desire to love their friends who've walked through infertility or are walking through infertility well, but they don't know what to say or do and how to love them. So yeah, that is what I've become passionate about. And my book, Give Grace, is all about just how to embrace the beauty of life's brokenness. We all walk through hard things. So how do we do that well? And how do we love people who are walking through hard things well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to take a break from this episode so I can share with you a partner that I'm really excited about, and that is Milk Bar. Do you remember growing up, like how much your mom went out of the way for you? And in listening, you probably are a mom now and you know all the things that you do for your kids, and it just makes you appreciate your mom so much more. Well, it's time to make sure she knows how grateful you are for her. So for this Mother's Day, go all out and treat your mom to Milk Bar. It is the perfect award-winning chef curated gift. James Beard and Chef Christina Tosi opened the first Milk Bar in 2008, and they have just been killing it. I actually remember my first Milk Bar experience, and I was visiting New York City, and it was like, what do you do when you're in New York? I want to say this was like 2010, and people are like, you have to go to Milk Bar. You have to go to Milk Bar. And so I did, and it was amazing. And since then, they have just grown like crazy, and now they have their online option as well, which makes me super excited since there isn't a location near me, but I can still get my fix of Milk Bar. And right now, for a limited time, Milk Bar is offering their delicious new strawberry shortcake and cake truffles. It's a perfect gift for Mother's Day because, let's be honest, you can't eat roses and the flowers are going to die, but these truffles, they're going to be delicious. So head on over to milkbarstore.com/mamas. If you want to order one of these amazing cakes, truffles, they have so many options online, and they have nationwide delivery. They have it fast, even overnight. So if you're like listening to this and you're like, oh crap, Mother's Day is in 2 days and I forgot to order something, you can overnight some Milk Bar. It's not too late. So right now, Milk Bar has a special limited time offer. You can get $10 off any order of $50 or more. When you go to milkbarstore.com/mamas, you'll get $10 off an order of $50 by going to milkbarstore/mamas. That's milkbarstore/mamas. Now back to the episode. I would love to dive more into your infertility journey because I know like a lot of people listening are there or have been there. And like you said, if you haven't gone through it, you don't understand it. And it's from the outside looking in, like you don't recognize, first of all, like, yeah, the financial aspect of it, but also the physical. Like you have to inject your body with drugs and get put on different hormones and do all sorts of different things. So, like at what point, because you got told at 27 that IVF would be your only chance. And that's pretty young to be told like you are going to have to go a different route. So if you could just like walk us through a little bit of like what that looked like, and then even like getting to the point where I'd love for you to share kind of like how you guys were able to do the financial part for your first round.
Yeah. So I was 27. We were not getting pregnant. We had been trying for 6 months and I just knew something was wrong. So we went to the doctor. I think being proactive is very important, and you have to advocate for yourself. I know a lot of people will tell you, you need to try for a year and la, 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 la. And it's like, why? If I feel like something is wrong, why will you not just run the test? So I'm a big advocate of just, if you're concerned at all, peace of mind is very valuable. So just be proactive, have the test run. And in the testing, it came out that we were going to have trouble. And so we went and met with a specialist, and he told us that IVF would be our only option. And it was just like, I remember sitting in that room and you see the posters of all the reproductive parts. And I was just like staring at the wall in a total fog. I'm like, did he really just say we have to do IVF? Like, that's the last step. If you don't know anything about infertility treatment, IVF is like the final phase, like the last chance option. It's also the most invasive and the most expensive. And here I was, a small business owner and a coach's wife, thinking like, how in the heck are we ever going to afford this, much less to go through all this? I mean, I just never thought that this would be our journey. And so we decided to go forward with it. At that point, we went to a local clinic. I did not shop around really for doctors. I just trusted my OB. And I wish I would have like asked for more advice. And we were just told we were going to be a slam dunk case. But I will say, as a word of caution to anyone walking through infertility, that not all fertility specialists are created equal. And just because your clinic is local doesn't mean it's the best place to go. I think there's a lot of doctors who unfortunately would let any couple or a lot of couples go through IVF. We had a nightmare of an experience the first round, and it was a semi-local clinic. And I just wish I could spare everyone from the pain and the heartbreak and the money lost that we experienced, because we were really sold a whole bunch of lies, and the clinic was not equipped to handle our case. But we were told we were going to be a slam dunk case. And so anyways, I just think there's so much value in a second opinion. And when you're talking about all these drugs that you're putting in your body, all these things that you're going to go through physically, emotionally, financially, it's worth it to go to the best place. Take the convenience factor out of the decision. Like I ended up for the second round of IVF. So let me back up. Our first round of IVF, we went through locally. About 6 days in, I went in for my first blood work and ultrasound, and was told that my estrogen levels were off the charts. So they had given me too much medicine, because they were putting us all, there's 25 women going through IVF at the same time. They, I think, put us all on similar protocols. So they had to call me in medication to bring my estrogen levels back down. But really at that point, they should have canceled my IVF cycle, because your eggs are supposed to grow slow and steadily, and mine just like spiked. And I think at that point, damage was done to my eggs. But they didn't cancel it. So we went through the whole thing, retrieved 10 eggs. They told me that they were all fragile. Out of the 10, only 3 fertilized. They were not growing like they had hoped. So on day 3, which the goal is to transfer at day 5, fully formed blastocysts. So we were on day 3. We transferred 3 very weak embryos, and they didn't make it. So in the same phone call that my doctor called me to tell me I wasn't pregnant, he told me that I had bad eggs and needed to have do donor eggs. And I was just blindsided. Like, I didn't even know what to say. And it took me a year truly to heal emotionally, physically, from the trauma of what I walked through. So fast forward, I got a second opinion, and went through IVF 2 years later at a different clinic, CCRM in Lone Tree, Colorado, with Dr. Schoolcraft. They got 20 mature eggs out, which I was 2 years older, so I shouldn't have gotten more eggs than I got the first time. 12 fertilized. We had 6 normal blastocysts, fully formed blastocysts. We have 3 beautiful boys right now and 2 embryos still frozen. So you can see just from the numbers, like, there was a huge difference in our success rate. Same eggs, same sperm, same like mom and dad, 2 years later. So it should have been worse. And it's all just going to the right place and having the right care and being, in the right hands. So obviously CCRM can't promise success, but what I loved about Dr. Schoolcraft is he's a straight shooter, and he was going to tell me if he didn't think it was going to work, because I just didn't think I could go through another failed cycle. So we are a lot of money into this. I tell my kids, like, y'all might be paying for your own cars, your own college, because just giving you life cost us a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I've learned so much in that journey through infertility, and it's given me such a deeper level of empathy for what other people are walking through. I may not understand the exact pain, but I have another level of empathy for people walking through hard things because of what I walked through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, we are going to take a break from this episode to talk about Kindred Bravely, y'all. You know it's my favorite prenatal, postnatal clothing brand that I have ever put on my body in my life. And I've tried a lot of different brands, and there is something so different about Kindred Bravely. Their fabrics are premium, super soft. They have a lot of different options. You can choose from bamboo, even organic cotton, and they're supportive. Their wire-free bras are amazing. I'm obsessed with their sports bras. I have a couple of those. They're like so supportive for pregnancy and postpartum. It's really hard finding supportive nursing bras. But like I said, the Kindred Bravely ones are awesome. And my boobs are ginormous right now. So they have tons of inclusive sizing for bras, nursing, pumping, both. Comfort is huge for me. And like I said, everything in theirs that I've put on my skin has been amazing. Their underwear, I bought not too long ago because all my other ones had holes in them. And that was one of the things that I hadn't tried out from them yet, was their underwear. They are so freaking comfortable and cute. I love them so much. I feel like they're definitely my favorite underwear that I've ever worn in my life. And their pajamas. I got a pair of matching pajamas. I'm trying to slowly get rid of like just the really frumpy, ugly things in my closet and replace it with things that I feel really good in, that I'm like, oh, I want to put this on and go to sleep in it. So I got a couple pairs of their pajamas, and then of course their leggings. That's the like number one thing that I recommend to people when they're like, okay, I'm pregnant. What should I get? The Louisa legging is amazing. I have 3 pairs because I wore out one of them. I literally wore it multiple times a week throughout my whole pregnancy with Jovi, throughout the whole year and a half postpartum and the next pregnancy. And I'm actually wearing them right now while I'm recording this. But I am like, I should probably get a couple more pairs because I wear these all the time. I need to wash them occasionally. And when I wash them, I need a different pair to wear. So I ordered a couple more pairs, and they are the most comfortable thing in the world. And they even have labor and delivery gowns that you can get, so you don't have to deal with the itchy hospital gowns that are super not flattering, but you can just bring your own thing to be comfortable in. So make sure that you check out Kindred Bravely. As you can tell, I'm a huge fan, and I'd love for you to experience the coziness and the comfort. So go to kindredbravely.com and use the discount Miraculous20 to save 20% off your purchase. That's 20% off your purchase when you use discount code Miraculous20 on kindredbravely.com. I would love for you to share, because your book's coming out called Give Grace. And I'd love to kind of have you share about the title and like, where did grace come into all of this for you?
Yeah. So I just learned walking through infertility that people don't know what to say to someone walking through something hard. And a lot of times people just wouldn't say anything at all. And so I felt very neglected and left alone. And also, like, I had all these expectations for myself and how I thought this process would go and how I wanted my body to look or respond or whatever. And grace just became such an anthem for me in that season of grace for myself. And then grace for others when they said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing or didn't show up when I thought they should. It just became such a huge part of the healing that happened in my heart. And I just think it's so important to give grace to ourselves. We live in these times with social media where the standards that we hold ourselves can be absolutely impossible to attain. And so just having grace for ourselves and reality and like as mothers now too, I mean, it's so easy to look side to side and compare yourself to other moms. I think there isn't a more ruthless crowd than the motherhood crowd. And it can be such a life-giving crowd, but it can also be such a group that tears people down and makes you feel so small so fast. And I just think grace is really important. And if we had more grace for ourselves and more grace for others, I think we would all be more joyful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed that the motherhood stuff is hard. And yes, I agree that like motherhood can definitely like be a ruthless crowd. I also feel like we're all just trying to do the best that we can. So as moms, it's really easy just to take things personal that might not be personal. Like somebody could be saying, oh, well, like for instance, like for me, I'm still breastfeeding my toddler. And by this time this podcast comes out, my next one will be born. So I plan on like tandem nursing, and I just get like a lot of opinions around that. Or like the fact that my 18-month-old, like she'll come up to me and be like, boob. And people are like, if she's old enough to ask for it, she's too old to be doing it, you know? And, and for me, it's like so easy for me to then be defensive or to be like, you know, just like whatever it is. And it's like, we're doing what works best for us. We're figuring it out. I'm not on a strict plan. Like, you know, we're just trying to figure it out. Yeah. So then it's easy to take things personally when people like say certain comments, I guess. Yeah.
And it's like, number one, they shouldn't say that because you didn't ask their opinion. And two, just knowing how to receive things like that and not take it personally and understand like, it's okay that we do things different. We're all going to mother differently, and that's okay. And it's our prerogative to do things how they work best for us and our family and our kids. And it's okay if it's not the same. And like, it's the motherhood group, the mom group is just so passionate. Like it all comes from such a deeply passionate place because we all love our kids so much and want to do what we feel is best for them. But I think we lose sight that what we feel is best isn't what someone else might feel is best. And that's okay. We can love each other even through that, and know that we can make a different choice and still choose to be friends and choose to love each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love for you to maybe share some insight to people who maybe they have a friend or someone close to them struggling with infertility. Like you were saying, you don't know how to respond or you don't know what to say. And even like to the point where, let's say, I had somebody in our Facebook group who got pregnant and her sister-in-law is struggling and like she's afraid to announce her pregnancy because of the there's already like tension in the relationship and there's, she's like, I'm just like, I want to be excited for myself, but I know she's hurting and I don't know what to say or do. Like, how do we support people around us dealing with infertility?
Yeah, I have a lot of tips.
Perfect.
Number one, I have a website called the Infertility Sisterhood, and on there's a tab called I Love Someone Struggling with Infertility. So go there, and it's a much deeper dive than I can do here. But number one, don't blindside them. Don't let a Facebook or Instagram post be the way that they find out. And do not take them to a dinner in public and tell them that you're pregnant. You need to handle it differently and deliver the news differently than you would anybody else. And know that she might cry. And she's not crying because you're pregnant. She's crying because your joy is a reminder of her brokenness. So be a safe place for her to cry and be confident that she can experience joy and grief at the same time. They can coexist. And if you want to be a good friend to her, let her have the space to let those emotions coexist. Just because she's experiencing grief over her story does not mean she can't experience joy too for yours. And her joy is going to look different than all your other friends' joy. Is she going to be doing toe touches on the front row of your gender reveal? No, she's not. And give her the space for that to be okay. Her joy and her outward expression of joy is going to look different. When you're in a season of grief, there's just such an emotional fight to survive the day. And so you're just not emotionally capable of what everyone else is. And so you need to put this person in a different category of the expectations that you're holding them to. I do have a resource out there called How to Tell Your Friend Walking Through Infertility That You're Pregnant. It's very helpful. So in that regard, go download that. But just as far as loving someone walking through infertility when you're pregnant or having kids, number one, do the thing or say the thing. It's always better to ask for forgiveness if you do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing than it is to just avoid them or to not show up at all. So if God lays something on your heart to do for your friend or say to your friend, do it. Say it. I would say going into the conversation or time together, repeat to yourself, I cannot fix this for them. I think so often we say things or do things because we just want to take the pain away or we just want to fix it for them, but we can't. Nothing that we can say and nothing that we can do is going to take her pain away or fix the situation. And so if we can frame that, our mindset going into the time with our friend there, I think it's going to be a lot better time spent because we won't be saying and trying to do things to take it take the pain away. Because sometimes when we say things or do things that are attempting to take the pain away, it feels like devalidating of your friend's pain. So my biggest advice is to just listen. Close your mouth and open your ears and just listen to her. And you don't have to say anything. Just say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This sucks. Like, repeat those things over and over again. This is hard. I'm sorry. And know that all you can do is be there and encourage her. But you can't fix it. So that's a hard reality, because when we love somebody, we just want to take their pain away and make it better, but we can't.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. Yeah. Those are really good tips. Just holding space.
Yeah.
For the other person. And like you're saying, just not blindsiding them with the information.
Yeah. Yes. A heads up is always really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What about for people who maybe are dealing with infertility and maybe at that point where they haven't shared? Like, at what point did you share with people around you? Because the questions that people always get are, when are you going to start having kids? When are you whatever? Right. And you want to be like, I can't, like it's, kind of dealing with that.
A lot of people there's people who walk through the entire process and never tell anybody. And I would just challenge you to say something to somebody, because walking through this alone is really hard. And also, only walking through it with your spouse puts a lot of pressure on them to be your only support system. And I know my husband was not able to get on the emotional level that I needed sometimes that my friends could. If you don't feel like you have a safe person to open up to, we have an online community called the Infertility Sisterhood. It is a free online community that you can join. You can join it anonymously, or you can join it as yourself. But it's just a safe place to show up and talk about what you're struggling with, ask questions, be heard. So I just think, whether it's in real life or on the internet, it is nice to feel understood and to be seen and to be able to talk to somebody about it that isn't your spouse. I think that is very healthy. So I shared pretty early on because I wanted people praying for us, and there's pros and cons to sharing or not sharing. And that's such a personal decision that each couple has to make. For me, the pros of sharing far outweighed the cons, because either way, you're going to get comments and questions. So if you tell people what you're walking through and what you're doing and all that, you're going to get comments and questions. If they don't know, you're going to get comments and questions. So sharing, in my opinion, doesn't really take that away. So it was worth it to me to open up. And I also think, like, there's all this talk in the infertility space about, like, stop asking these questions or whatever. And I get that. Like, I do get that. But until people are willing to step up and in the moment with lots of grace say, we've actually been trying for a really long time, and that is not a good question to ask people, it's not going to change. Like, we have to educate. We have to be willing to educate people. And it helps in the moment to be called out. I think we should do it with love and grace, but also with truth. Like, hey, like, I know I want to believe that you're just genuinely interested in my life, but we're actually walking through a really hard thing. And that's not a good question to ask a couple, because you just never know. And then, they're going to be like, oh, and probably never ask that question to anyone else ever again. So I think it took me a while to get to that point, but I did get to that point, and it opened the door to some really good conversations with people. And I'm pretty sure those people will never ask somebody again when they're having kids. So you can't want people to stop asking and also not be willing to have that conversation of like, hey, you shouldn't ask this because you just never know. I think it's hard to want both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. You were saying earlier that there was a season of it that was hard on your marriage. And I'd love for you to share that. Because again, I mean, it's a financial burden, an emotional burden, the drugs that you have to take, do things to your body.
Right.
So I'd love for you to just maybe share some of that and maybe some tips for people who are going through this with their partner and, you know, it gets tense sometimes. How did you navigate all that?
Yeah. I think just open communication and giving each other the space to handle this differently, like knowing that I'm a female, he's a male, we are wired and created totally different, and it's okay. And we're even within those categories, like not every female is created like me, not every male is created like Blake, and we're going to navigate things differently, and that's okay. And so we need to give each other the space to do that and not put all this pressure on each other to be something that we're not. We try to communicate openly about all the things like finances, how we're feeling. Like infertility treatment in a lot of ways feels very one-sided. Like I went through infinitely more than Blake did. And that's hard. And we also, like, I don't speak openly about what our diagnosis was because the blame game in infertility can be real and strong on both sides. And I think we just always, both of us, like, decided, like, no matter what, we are a team and we are a united front, and it doesn't matter, like, who's bringing what issues to the table. We are a united front and we're going to handle it that way. And that was really helpful. Like, it was never like him saying to me, it's your fault, or me saying to him, it's your fault. Like, there was none of that. Like, you have to watch your words carefully. And this is just in marriage in general and in life in general, because you can ask for forgiveness for things that you say, but you can't ever unhear what has been said to you. So just taking a moment when you need to take a moment, gather yourself, and then have conversations when you're calm and not emotional, because you cannot unsay things. So yeah, those would be my tips.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. That makes very sense. And I love, like, that makes great sense. I love how you were also saying that you decided early on to be a united front. I think that that's kind of a key component of marriage anyways. And then as we are learning in parenting as well, yes. Like backing each other up of, oh, you said no. Yeah. Now I can't turn around and say yes.
Totally. I mean, we do the same thing. I mean, one thing that my parents did that I loved is I always knew that they were going to have each other's backs. And if we ever went to dad after mom had said no and even asked dad, like, we got in huge trouble. And like, my parents, even if they disagreed in private. And then to us, they were a united front. And I love that. And I respect that so much. And it is such an important thing in parenting too, because kids learn really fast that they can pin you against each other if you let them. And there's nothing more devaluing of the other person if, like, they said one thing and then you go behind their back and change your mind or say the opposite. And it's just a good, solid marriage is built on respect both ways, showing respect and honoring each other with your words and with your body. And just we try to teach that with our boys, like, to our boys now. Like, you have a choice in how you show honor and respect with your mouth and with your body. Like, hitting somebody else is not showing honor and respect with your body. And we teach our boys, if someone says no, or someone says stop, you stop the first time. And I think like this is something like long-term that I hope impacts them and how they treat and respect women. Like if someone says stop, you stop the first time. And I think it seems so innocent when they're toddlers, like, oh, you're just tickling them or they're tickling someone else and they say stop and you keep going. Like we have to teach our kids that no means no and stop means stop the first time. And that's just showing honor and respect to other people with our words and with our bodies. And it is a marriage too. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with the whole no and stop thing.
It's just important. I mean, it's important for both genders, but I think especially for boys to learn how to treat and respect women. I was like, I will raise men that know how to show honor and respect to women.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, on the other side, like raising girls to grow up to be women who can stand, like, be like, no, I said no. And like stand firm in that and know that when I say no, that means that you stop and so on. So I do try to do that with my daughter, except for like now right now, like no is her favorite word. And so I'm like, okay, we have to change your poopy diaper. And she's like, no. And I'm like, no, we have to, like, like trying to explain, like, listen, this is something that's going to have to happen.
She's just young. Like she will get to the point where she can understand the difference of like, okay, this is like, you can't just tell me no for things that, are concerning your health.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, she's just young and every 18 month to 2-year-old's favorite word is no. And they're learning to exercise their own will, which is really good, but it's also challenging.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'd love for you, before we wrap up, tell people where your book's going to be available. Maybe a little bit more about your book, and then I'll include in the show notes, like your website, the Infertility Sisterhood, and the link to your book as well.
Yeah. So it's actually available now, anywhere books are sold. You can get it on our website, which is scarletandgoldshop.com, Scarlet with 1 T, or it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere books are sold. And it really is just an encouraging tool for anyone walking through a hard season of any kind. Like, even if it doesn't feel that deep or heavy, I know it will encourage you. So if you just need a little bit of encouragement, I would challenge you to get it. If you also have a friend who's walking through something hard and you don't know what to get them, this would be a really great gift. It's beautiful. It's hardback with gold foil on the front. It's a beautiful gift for somebody. But you can get it anywhere, and you can find me on Instagram at Megan Smalley or on my website, megansmalley.com. You'll find the links to all the things there.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and giving all the tips for people supporting people dealing with infertility, or if you're going through it, because I do feel like it's hard to know what to do or where to turn or how to navigate that. So I just want to thank you so much for your time and energy and education today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful for the incredible resources that she has created, and I'm going to attach them in the show notes so that you guys can check them out. May is Maternity Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's always one of my favorite months because of the changes that have happened, that the work that we're continuing to do to break the stigma around mental health. And when it comes to motherhood, it's such a hard topic because of the labor of love that it is, that you wouldn't trade your children or being a mom for the world, but sometimes you want to go into a closet and scream at the top of your lungs or break something or be like, yeah, I don't like my kids right now, and feeling like maybe you can't say that. And it's a really it can be hard to really express how you're feeling because you don't want to sound ungrateful. And so talking about maternal mental health and the importance of it helps change that stigma of, hey, this is a season of life that can definitely be tough, but we can talk about the positive and we can talk about the hard. We can talk about both. And I know that I've changed my opinions on it so many times. What my experience after Jovi was a completely different experience than what I'm going through now with Tula. Jovi, looking back, I definitely had some postpartum anxiety. I had really bad intrusive thoughts that controlled my day, that controlled my sleep, that I cried myself to sleep, that I couldn't bond with her for months. And now looking back at that experience, I feel like it's made me, I don't want to say a better mom for Tula, but it kind of has. Like, I've realized, wow, when Jovi was this tiny, I was so mentally in a different place because I couldn't be here because of the anxiety and thoughts that were going on in my mind, that with Tula, I feel so much more present, soaking in these moments of her just being tiny, because I look at how big Jovi is now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like when she was the size of Tula, like I was just so worried constantly. So this time I'm able to not be as worried with Tula. I mean, there's always going to be, as a mom, you're going to worry about your kids, right? But I'm able to be present. I'm able to soak in those moments with her and make sure that that I'm just showing up in a different way. When she wakes up in the middle of the night, I really don't get frustrated, or I don't get upset when she's crying. I don't have near as many triggers with Tula as I did with Jovi. I think part of that is with your first kid, those things start to show up and you get the opportunity to work through them. And I feel like I did work through some, or at least recognize, so that they don't come up or control. So with Tula, it's like they're not really there. Like those things don't really trigger me. I'm a lot more compassionate toward myself and toward my baby. And learning, looking back and learning that with Jovi is hard, because then I feel like that mom guilt of like, I feel like I could have been a better mom to her. Was I really there for her? Was I checked out completely mentally? Was I not compassionate toward her? I definitely feel like I was, but just feeling like maybe I could have showed up in a better way. But then you also realize that you're doing the best you can with the tools you have. And I was able to learn and do better with Tula. But you guys understand what I'm saying. It's just like this mental load of like, could have I been a better mom? And I didn't know how to be a mom, so I don't think I could have, right? That's how I learned. And my tool bucket is definitely continuing to grow. So maternal mental health is so important. Having these conversations, being real and being raw, and being able to even admit some of these things to you guys and share out loud is hard. It's emotional, and I feel like I seemed like I had it more put together when I had Jovi, but I really didn't. So if you are in that boat, you are not alone, and it's okay to talk about it and to have these conversations, and then to find the sweetness in this season of life. And there is there's a lot of sweetness in it. So I'm excited to look forward to the rest of the month and having a little bit of these conversations laced in there. And I love you guys, and we'll talk to you next week.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.